going on, guys? My name is Austin. This is the Bodies in Business podcast. And today we're going to talk about progress. And the reason why we're talking about progress today is because making progress in the health and wellness space is one of the most motivational things that can happen to keep you on course to reaching your health and wellness goals. So there are a lot of topics we're going to jump into, but the first is goal setting. You need to be able to set a goal for yourself so that you know you're making progress to the goal you're trying to reach. And that goal can, for most people, I would say in the health and wellness department, is losing weight, right? I think for most people, that's very motivating in the beginning because they're like, all right, I want to lose 10, 15, 20 pounds so that I feel better, I look better, and I feel better about myself. And there's so many things to unpack when somebody says, I want to lose weight. But I think that's a really big one for people is losing weight. Now, what I'll say on the losing weight realm of progress is a lot of times people kind of stall out after they lose a certain amount of weight, maybe like 5, 10 pounds or something. And then they hit like a plateau for a little while. So that kind of decreases their motivation. They were like, man, I'm losing 1 to 2 pounds a week. I'm really on this thing. And then maybe a month or two into it, you're like, oh man, I just can't get past losing the 10-pound mark. And so people get fixated on this losing weight thing. And so they feel like they're not making any progress. Whereas if you just shift your mindset to something else that you can make progress on, it's super helpful. So that's what I wanted to highlight in this talk to begin with is in the beginning, your goal can be losing weight. And I think that's a very motivating goal for most people because when they see themselves losing weight, they actually get real excited and they're like, man, the effort that I'm putting in is actually helping me reach my goal. Now, that you need to understand that's good, but then we have to shift our focus to maybe something else to help us feel like we're making progress. And that could be, running a race like a 5K or running a marathon if that's something you're able to do. My goal is getting great sleep. And that might sound kind of weird for some people, but some people might be like, yeah, that would be a great goal to get great sleep. And the reason why that's a goal for me is because when I get great sleep, I feel like I can conquer the world the next day. And for me, sleep is such an important factor on how I perform each day. That is something on a day-to-day basis that I try to focus on because I know if I'm getting great sleep, they've shown in research that people who get really, really good sleep are usually pretty healthy. That doesn't, it's not probably a 1-to-1 correlation that if you get great sleep, you're super healthy, but it's in the good direction. The reason why I focus on sleep is because if I get great sleep, I do really, really well from a performance stance the next day. So how do I get great sleep? And how do I set myself up to get great sleep? And how I do that is I work out during the day. I make sure I hit either my step goal or I get a good workout in the day. I eat dinner. This is getting closer to sleep. I eat dinner at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime so that I can digest all the food before I go to sleep so that I don't get acid reflux or I don't feel full when I go to sleep. And then I start getting ready for bed around 9:30 so I can go to bed at latest 10:30. And so there's a lot of other things that I try to do, but those are like checklist things that I want to do so that I know I'm going to get great sleep at night. And I've gotten good sleep before in the past, so I know these things actually help me do that. So getting great sleep for me is a goal for me every night. And it's something that I can do on a daily basis and it can compound on each other. And so that great sleep is something that I look forward to and it's a goal for me. And, I have other goals that are in business and other things like that, but like that's a wellness goal. If I'm getting great sleep, it actually impacts every aspect of my life because adenosine is actually the thing that suppresses dopamine. And if you have too much adenosine in your body, you're actually going to feel really, really tired and you're not going to be super motivated to go do more things. And your dopamine receptors aren't going to be as sensitive. So that's why sleep is so important because you want to flush out that adenosine, get more ATP built up so that your dopamine receptors are very sensitive and you're ready to go do something. So that is something so simple. It's like for you, for anybody else, it could be just getting a workout in the day or going for a walk, or getting your steps in for the day, or eating a certain amount of fiber throughout the day. These are things that you can make daily goals of, and it doesn't have to be like super audacious goals. It doesn't have to be like, hey, I have to get 9 hours of sleep every day. No, it's like, I want to get in bed at 10 o'clock, and then I'll set my alarm for 7 so that I give myself an ample amount of time to get enough rest to feel rested in the morning. Anyways, I'll stop harping on the sleep thing, but the next thing we want to talk about is how you measure your progress. So we already talked about weight loss. Weight loss is one way you can measure your progress. Let's talk about increasing your lift totals like bench press, squat, or deadlift or something like that, or doing more push-ups or doing more pull-ups, being able to hang from the bar. Those are great ways to measure progress when it comes to fitness. Hitting a certain step count each day, week, or month are great ways to measure how much movement you're getting in for the day. And I truly believe that we don't focus on movement just in general throughout the day enough. And this is a great way to document progress throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout the month, so you know you're getting enough steps in. It's just a really good indicator of how much energy am I burning throughout the day. So another one I already talked about is eating enough fiber throughout the day. These are things you can control, right? A lot of times we can control what goes into our body from a food standpoint. So you can control how much fiber you can eat in a day. And that's a mark on the day of, man, longevity and fiber are like very, very tightly correlated with how much fiber you're eating and how long people live. So that's really cool, that if you can control how much fiber you eat in a day, then you can actually impact your longevity over the long term. It's really cool. Going to the gym a certain number of times. If you have the convenience of being able to go to the gym and you can say, you know what, I want to try to go to the gym 4 times this week or 5 times this week, you can count the number of times you made it to the gym. And so these are things you can actually have control of. Now, some people need to say, you know what, I want to work out 5 times this week, not even to go to the gym. I just want to do a 15-minute workout at my home 5 times this week. So these are measures of progress that you can do that aren't necessarily out of your control. So like weight loss is in your control, but it also can fluctuate depending on stress levels, depending on sleep, depending on a bunch of things. And so that's why I try not to focus too heavily on the weight loss factor over the long term, because it's just so fluctuating over the long term. And it's really about sleep, diet, and exercise. And that weight loss will happen over time. And then you hit kind of a set point where it's something you're not going to lose too much more weight. For myself, I range between about 185 and 190 usually, and I stay within that range because I've kind of hit a sustainable lifestyle that allows me to stay within that range. Have a 3 meals in a day, go work out about 5 times a week, and move, consistently hitting about 10,000 steps 5 to 6 times a day or 5 to 6 times a week. All right, so how you measure your progress matters. So we talked about having a goal. Then we talked about we want to be able to measure our progress. Measuring your progress matters, and you have to document in order to measure your progress. There's no perfect plan. That's the next thing. There's no perfect plan means that a lot of people are looking for the best way that they can do something, the best way, the fastest way that they can lose 20 pounds or something like that. And a lot of times there is no best or perfect plan. There really isn't. There are certain ways that you can do things that are going to help you reach your goal faster, but things come up in life. Certain people have more time than other people. And I would say I'd use this example of when my younger brother lost about 75 pounds, he was a single guy. He didn't have any dependents. He had no kids, no girlfriend, no nothing. And he lost 75 pounds because he literally go to the gym, or he worked at a gym, and he'd work out like twice a day. He'd work out in the morning, work out in the evening, and he was locked in on his diet. No one was telling him, hey, you can't eat this, can't eat that. He was eating exactly what he needed to eat. Now, if you are a mother or a father and you have, 3 or 4 kids, or even if you just have one kid, that's going to throw so much more variables into your weight loss journey or just wellness journey in general, that you may not be able to lose 75 pounds in a year. It might take you 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years to do something like that if that's your goal. And so that's where I think a lot of people think there's a perfect plan out there and I just need to find it and it's going to be so much easier if I do it. And the reality is there's going to be bumps along the way in every plan. The real thing is to just get started and adapt as you go and not just give up. So you're going to hit bumps along the way. The real gold is being able to just adapt to something that happens in your life and then keep going forward. So we talked about goals. We talked about how to measure your progress. And we said that there's no perfect plan. Now we're going to talk about environment. Your environment is one of the most important things when it comes to reaching your goal as fast as you possibly can. Because if you are in an environment where people are not supporting you and maybe people are even making fun of you for trying to reach a certain wellness goal, that's going to have a major impact on how fast or how long you're even trying to pursue your goals. I know there's been a lot of times in my life where I feel like I was always like fighting an uphill battle trying to live a healthy life sometimes, just because of the people I was living with or the friends I was around, because they just didn't have the same type of attitude towards wellness that I did. So I felt like I was kind of an outcast sometimes, and I felt like I was going against the grain. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone's always going to be, your biggest cheerleaders telling you, oh, you're doing great. I love that you're doing this. Keep going to work out, keep, eating super healthy. That's not going to be the case either. You're going to have people that are like, hey, come out and, have some drinks with me, or, eat this, big, huge plate of nachos with cheese and all this other stuff on it. I'm not hating on nachos, but that's just something that you need to know in your environment. The people you have around you make a big difference, because if you have really, really healthy people and they're pushing you to be as healthy as you can, that's probably going to help you out the most. If you have really, really unhealthy people always around you and you're constantly fighting a battle of maybe they make fun of you trying to be healthy, or they get angry with you because you're trying to be healthier, these all have like psychological effects on you and can be very, create barriers for you to try to reach your goal, and then may not even give you the opportunity to reach your wellness goals. So who's around you makes a big difference. The books you listen to, the podcasts you listen to, and the shows you watch, all these things play a huge role in you reaching your goals. All right, I want to talk about a few other things and then I want to wrap this up. So the next thing is and we talked about there's no perfect plan, but there's always a bunch of different ways that you can reach your goal. And I want to use an example. I have a friend that I went and visited with my wife the other day. They've got 5 kids and he's married. He's got 5 kids, and it was me, my wife, and we were hiking up this mountain. We're all going up together. Well, at one point, the kids and the dad decide to take a different route. They're like, you know what? We're going to go up this really steep part. And me, my wife, and my friend's wife just kept going because she had a baby strapped to her chest. And so it was us, our little pod, they went on their way. So they were going up the mountain another way. Then about 5 to 10 minutes later, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to run up this thing. And so I ran up the mountain, and my wife and my friend's wife were both walking together and with the baby. And so I got up the mountain. I was the first one up the mountain. And so I was by myself. I didn't have to worry about anything. I didn't have any kids. I told my wife, she was like, no, I just want to hang back. So I got up the mountain first. And then the next people to get up the mountain was my wife and my friend's wife with the baby. And they were talking back and forth, kind of like, encouraging each other to walk up the mountain and just having a good talk. And then the last group that came up the mountain was my buddy and his 4 kids. And it was because he had to wrangle all of them, and he had to put one of them on his, shoulders at one point and get them up the mountain. But I tell that story is because we all made it up the mountain, but we just did it in different ways. And everybody has different things going on in their lives that are going to prevent them from reaching the top of the mountain as fast as somebody else, right? I didn't have 4 kids that I was trying to help get up a mountain. I didn't have a baby strapped to my chest. I wasn't talking to another person. I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to get up this mountain as fast as possible. That doesn't mean I'm better than my wife and my friend's wife, or better than my friend and his kids. No, I just decided to go up the mountain in a quicker way. We all made it up the mountain. So that's what I wanted to tell you is if you're trying to make it up a mountain and you see other people getting up there faster than you, it's different circumstances sometimes. You're not always in the same circumstances. And that's something I think we compare ourselves a lot to people, and it can be frustrating, right? Like in business for me, when I hear people making millions of dollars making in business, I'm like, man, I want to be making millions of dollars, And it's frustrating because I'm like, what do I need to do to accelerate my business so that I can make more money? But people are in different circumstances. People had different ideas. People had different people helping them out or holding them back. And it's just you have to remember, the mountain is, people are trying to climb the mountain in a bunch of different ways, and people are going to get up there at different times. All right. So hopefully that analogy helped. And then we already talked about this, but what you track really, really matters. If you only track weight loss and then all of a sudden you hit a plateau of losing 10 pounds and you want to lose 30 and you can't get past that 10 pounds, that's going to be very demoralizing. And so you have to, in your mind, you have to be like, okay, I need to focus on something else other than weight loss. Weight loss can be something you focus on, but you need to focus on something else in tandem with your weight loss focus, so that you understand, hey, let's say I'm only walking 7,000 steps a day. Let me up it to 8,000 steps a day. See if that helps with my weight loss. All right, let me up it to 9,000 steps. See if that helps with my weight loss. These are the things you can do in order to have 2 progressions that are going to motivate you to want to keep doing more. All right. Maybe you need to walk 10,000 steps a day, and that will increase your weight loss. Maybe you need to focus on, other things. Focus on the amount of sleep you're getting and then tandem that with your weight loss. So those are things I think that are important. Is don't just focus on something like weight loss over the long term. Focus on these other things that you have a lot more control over. And then I'll leave you with this. I want to talk about this. I was listening to a Jim Rohn podcast, essentially, or just a talk that he did that was on YouTube. And there were so many good one-liners he had that I really enjoyed listening to that I wanted to just say them here. One of them is, progress doesn't need to be obvious to anyone but you, but it must be consistent a little bit every day. And I love that quote because not everybody's going to see all the effort that you're putting in. And so if you yourself can see that you're making progress, it's going to motivate you to want to continue making progress. All right. Not everybody is monitoring every single thing that you're doing. And so they don't know how much progress you're actually making. They could just see, it looks like they're making a little bit of progress, or they're making no progress, or man, it looks like they're putting in a lot of work for nothing, right? But for you, you have to know that you're making progress each day, so that motivates you to keep going. Another quote was, the greatest transformations in life don't come from one big decision or one lucky break. They come from small daily disciplines stacked over time. And I would say I totally agree with this when it comes to wellness. Walking 10,000 steps a day will do wonders for you. Going and running a marathon one day, one weekend versus walking 10,000 steps a day doesn't hold a candle to that, right? And you would think, oh man, running a marathon, that's so much better than walking 10,000 steps a day for a month. But if you walk 10,000 steps a day for a month, you actually do 6 marathons. And so it's kind of cool to think about. Anyways, next one. How do you make progress when it gets hard? And that's something we need to think about, is whenever it gets hard, how can I still make a little bit of progress? Whenever my day is so busy, how can I still get a 15-minute workout in? Because I know that 15-minute workout is going to continue to help me push towards my wellness goal. How can I get a 15-minute walk in? How can I do 100 push-ups instead of going to the gym, right? It's those little things that are going to help us continue to make progress. And then the last one, he said, progress begins with one simple shift. Stop negotiating with yourself. And I would say I love that quote, because a lot of times people will be like, I'll go work out tomorrow, or I'll eat better tomorrow, or whenever I have the time, I'll make time for that. And we negotiate with ourselves, as opposed to just saying, you know what? Nope, I'm gonna do 5 minutes of burpees, and I'm just gonna call it good for the day because I know that's gonna be helpful. I'm going to eat this plate of vegetables because I know it's helpful, and not negotiate. Be like, I'll just eat those tomorrow. It's like, no. The other thing too is set your schedule. When he said stop negotiating with yourself, is when your schedule is lined up so that you can't negotiate with yourself, that's usually when you make the most progress. So obviously, if your kids go to a school and they have to be there by 8, most of the time you're going to have them there by 8. So giving ourselves some sort of time frame and timeline of doing something is super helpful when it comes to keeping ourselves on time, on schedule, and heading in that direction. All right, no matter what, I'm gonna do 30 minutes of walking no matter what. Even for the past 6 months, I haven't seen any progress. I'm still gonna go walk for 30 minutes because I know it's gonna help my brain and body from a health and wellness standpoint. Anyways, that's all I got, guys. I had a bunch more stuff, but I'm not going to get into it because we've already hit 21 minutes, and that's all I got. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, always remember, set a goal, track your progress, and keep going when it gets really hard. All right. You may have to adapt a little bit, but just because you're not making giant amounts of progress doesn't mean what you're doing in the health and wellness department is not helping you in other ways. What I'll say is, I'll give you this example. From a business standpoint, there's an education committee meeting every Friday, every first Friday of the month. And this Friday, didn't have too much of a update on anything, but I gave my 2-minute spiel, and I go there every Friday, every first Friday of the month. And I did my spiel, and I was like, man, I'm not going to get anybody, wanting to do fly bodies or do anything. I had two people come up to me at the end of the day or at the end of the meeting and say, hey, we'd love to work with you. And I was floored, because I was like, if I didn't show up to that meeting and give my 2-minute speech, I wouldn't have got those 2 people to come up to me. And I truly believed, I was like, I'm not going to get any bites, any nibbles from these people today, just because it was just it was a flat presentation. Afterwards, I was like, I can't believe I gave it that flat a presentation. But showing up, giving the briefing and not briefing, but a 2-minute presentation, I had somebody come up to me, and I'm going to go do a tour of their campus on Wednesday this week. So I give those because, business to me is such a hard journey. And I feel like a lot of people have a hard journey in wellness. Right now, I'm going through a really hard journey in business, and business and bodies in business really go well together. Anyways, that's all I got, guys. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, let me know, and keep getting after it. Peace.